Guys, we made it to Brooklyn. We are now in Brooklyn Bridge Park, and guess what I found? It's the Pilings. Been wanting to shoot here for a while. I've seen it in photos, but we are now gonna do a quick tutorial on how to do long exposure shots around sunset with a wide angle lens. So here goes. This is my first time here on this side of Brooklyn. There's some construction here, but I mean, I can see how this is going to be incredibly beautiful. I just came down from up here, High Street, found a way over the highway, across this bridge, and back down here. So you got Brooklyn Bridge just over there, and once you get out, pretty much it takes you straight into the Pilings. Lots of greenery, great hiking trails, good running space, and really awesome views of Manhattan, as you can see. All right, so we're just making our way down into, this is a boat docking or boat loading area, but they've closed it off, and that's kind of as far as you're allowed to go over there. But we're just gonna set up our tripod. It's spitting a little, but we're gonna make it work. Hopefully we get a nice sunset, but you never know. So I just set up the tripod. I'm gonna walk you through how we're gonna do a long exposure shot here with the Brooklyn Pilings right behind me. So here we go. So step one, of course, is to set up your tripod. I figured out kind of how I wanted to frame it. So my tripod's up there with my camera. It's the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II here. And I got my carbon fiber Sirui tripod, carbon fiber tripod, and that's ready to go. So that's step one. All right, the second piece of gear that you're really gonna need is some sort of filter holder and filter itself. So the one I'm using here is called formatt-hitech. These guys are really awesome. I've used them for a lot of my long exposure shots. So what I got here, let me open it up. So this is formatt-hitech, and I got a bit of a custom setup here. For my 7 to 14 millimeter lens, I got the formatt-hitech basically holder. These are glass filters that slot right in, and these have been really solid for me. What you'll see here on the back, let's put it right here. This one here is specially designed, so this top part, specially designed for this Olympus 7 to 14 millimeter lens, pretty much 3D printed. The official ones for formatt-hitech were a bit too expensive, so I just got a guy who does his own 3D printing of this holder. So this is key. And then the second part is the glass itself. So that's what I got here. This is an ND, I believe ND32. So that's what stops down the light, and what's gonna give that really smooth, kind of buttery look that you're looking for, whether in daytime or now we're trying to do a bit of a sunset shot here. All right, so we got the Olympus set up. We got a bit of a tricky situation here because it is spitting. So we're gonna try to clean this off as best as we can. So relatively clean. This is a super wide angle lens. Next up, we got the filter holder. So you pretty much slot it in. All right, awesome. So filter holder is on. All right, last step is the glass. So that's what you see here. Got to be careful. But what you want to do is essentially slot this in. Sorry, this is an ND3. This is their Firecrest brand. Again, stops down the light, which is kind of what you need, even though there's still quite a bit of light left. And even though light is diminishing, this is something that you're going to want so that you can really do that long exposure. Okay, got the camera on. Looks obviously really dark. So the keys for doing long exposure, there are a couple things you got to think about. So first of all, you're going to want to make sure that your ISO isn't set to auto, because it's looking at something that's super dark. It's going to pump it up all the way to, at this point, 6400. So we're going to change this to 200 for this camera. That's what I have. Don't typically want to go low because there's some sacrifices there. But for you guys that might have Canon or Nikon full frame, you can bring it down to ISO 100. So that's step one. Step two is you're going to want to change your f-stop. So I don't want something that's super shallow. For micro four thirds, f3.5, f4 is probably where you're going to want to be for landscape shots. And exposure compensation, this really depends on how you want it to look. So you're going to be playing around with this, I feel like. I'm going to set it to just 0 for now and see how that looks. And you'll notice that the light meter at this point is showing 15 seconds. Sorry, the light meter is showing 15 seconds down here. Another thing you're going to want to adjust is basically with the Olympus, you have the ability to set it into anti-shock mode. So you want to do that as well, but actually even better, I'm going to set it to a 2-second anti-shock. So after I press the shutter, I'm going to let the vibration settle, and then it's going to do its anti-shock, so it really makes sure that you get a really still photo. So that's right here, 2-second anti-shock. I would say another thing that I've learned shooting with these type of filters is that with something at the super wide angle range, you're going to get some light diffraction, I would call it. At the very wide angle range, you're going to get some strange artifacts come through. So you need to figure out with your lens and your camera how it works with the filter. For this particular shot, I'm actually zoomed all the way in, which kind of eliminates those artifacts. But let's give it a shot. So let's set the focus. So the thing with an ND filter is that it's going to be hard to focus on a specific location because it's so dark. So the trick is to actually lift your ND filter up, and then what you do from there is set your camera to manual focus, manually focus out into the distance, so either on the horizon or kind of point of focus in the landscape. Once you're done, put the filter back in and you're good to go. And we're going to set it 15 seconds. So after 15 seconds, this is what we have. So you can see a lot of the water has gone milky here, which is kind of the effect that you wanted. Sunset's starting to creep in, which is really nice. So we'll do a couple of these. But really, that's all there is to it. Long exposure shots, you just need the right equipment. You need a good camera like the Olympus OMD EM1 Mark II with a lot of its built-in features, and then you're good to go. All right, so here are a few examples of shots that I took while I was out there. This was the first one. And second one, a little bit of editing here to sharpen things up, but you'll see that the light is starting to diminish. Things are getting pretty dark at this point. Lights are turning on, and I have to increase the exposure through Lightroom. And at this point, actually, I had to remove my ND filter altogether. It was stopping too much light coming in, and the exposure was taking too long. And it was actually interesting lighting here because the skyscrapers were turning on their lights, and you get a lot of reflection from the clouds, and you get a bit of the sunset towards the back. It was a cloudy day, so I didn't get as much as I wanted, but still a pretty dramatic scene. So here's a recap. First, you got to set up your tripod, of course. Make sure it's on stable footing and mount your camera. From there, install your ND filter. So whether it's glass like mine with a special mount or a screw-on filter, both work. On your camera, set your ISO to the lowest setting. In my camera, it was ISO 200, but for a lot of DSLRs, that's ISO 100. That makes sure that you get the cleanest image possible. From there, you want to set your camera to aperture priority mode. For me, this is comfortable f4 for landscape photos, but for SLRs, I'd say use an f8 for these landscape type photography. Then you want to make sure you're properly focused. And in this case, the easiest way is to remove the filter, switch the lens to manual focus, and set focus to the primary part of the landscape. And lastly, either use a shutter release remote or set the camera to a 2-second timer with anti-shock if available. And make sure you just try different things. These are some suggestions for different settings to change to get that silky smooth landscape.